black thing go from left to right, and I thought, I'm going to die out here. No one's ever going to know. I couldn't believe what my eyeballs were showing me. I'll never forget how evil the eyes were. It was horrible. I mean, I've never seen nothing that evil.
It ran towards me at a rate that I can't even explain. Turned and stared at me, and this look of, I just want to kill you. I want to say it was human, but it wasn't.
He was yelling at me to grab a gun. I was like, for what? He said, just grab a gun. And there's footprints all the way to the door of my house. It had went inside my garage, all the way to the door.
911, what are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Zia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
You're listening to Sasquatch Chronicles. Check us out online at sasquatchchronicles.com. If you've had an encounter, email me. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you tonight. Going to be talking to Paul Graves. And I've been friends with Paul for many years. Paul's actually agreed to come on and give a lecture as far as Bigfoot research goes. So I hope you guys will be able to get something from this. You kind of have to bear with me. My whole jaw is swollen. And so anyway, that's a whole nother story. So bear with me tonight. But I'm excited to have Paul on to talk about some of the research. And I hope you're able to walk away with some information. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome Paul. Paul, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you, Wes. It's good to be back. Good talking with you. Happy New Year and all that. So thank you.
Yeah, Happy New Year, Paul. And, back when I've asked some researchers to come on and talk about what they do, and most of the time I get blank stares from them. And I know you've agreed to come on and kind of give a lecture on it. And I know when I talked to the doc before he passed, he would always bring up your name. But if you would, Paul, I know you're here to kind of give a lecture on Bigfoot research, so I'll let you take it away.
Well, yeah, I don't know if we'll be able to get through everything, but thank you, Wes. I mean, that's definitely a good topic to talk about. Everyone, of course, has their own way of doing research and such. Me, coming from Washington State, I'm over here in north central Washington, so basically 2/3 of the landmass of Washington State is over here there's like 6 million people in Washington and not even 1 million people over on this side of the mountain. So, real rural. Wenatchee, where I live, is back right up to the Cascade Mountains. They're literally right at the end of my street. The foothills start and go up. And so, I have anywhere from 3 to 5 million acres, including wilderness areas, right at my back door, and a lot of steppe habitat also. But one of the things what I did, when I first started out, it wasn't going out and doing what people are doing today. I was interested in hearing the local stories. Coming from a town like this, there's a lot of people that hunt and fish here. It's a lot of outdoor activity and such, and which in a lot of places in Washington is like that. So, but it was the stories that I was really interested in. And when I first heard my first story back in 1988 of a guy that saw one, he was actually hunting and had walked off. His friend had dropped him off on a corner on a logging road. He walked back into the forest, a quarter mile or so, and came upon this pond, and he looked across the pond, and there was this black thing, and it looked like it was crouched down in a crouched position, but he actually put it in his rifle scopes and watched this thing for 30 seconds to a minute, and he said it was kind of making a grimacing face and this and that, and he could not shoot it. I mean, most hunters that go hunting, they get a hunting permit for a certain animal, and that's, most hunters are good. If you're going for bear or whatever, that's what you're going for. And he couldn't shoot it because it did look too human to him. It really freaked him out. And so after that time, I started, talking and realizing there was more going on around here, and really started digging in and trying to find my mom. Was a newspaper reporter at the Wenatchee Daily World for 26 years, so I learned a little bit of stuff from her about how to talk and interview people and stuff like that. And I just started getting a lot of stories, and that's what really interested me in what the people were doing when the encounter happened. And so I had always based my thoughts on that until later when, I didn't think no one else was doing this stuff. I really thought, for a while it was like a big secret. I didn't want to tell anybody either. It was like, okay, I'm going to be, I can't let anyone know, I'm doing this in like secret, research.
Yeah.
Of course, there was other people, and I learned that. And the first group of people I got involved with was some local folks, and I went actually to a BFRO expedition and kind of saw what that was all about for a year or two. And decided, no, that really wasn't my way of doing things. I've always done a lot of individual research by myself. Some of the best things that's ever happened have actually been by myself or like one other person. Not saying that maybe big groups of people you can't pick the curiosity, because there is that curiosity factor. So, I started looking at the reports. Well, people were having them, seeing them when they were camped in a campground, or when they were hunting, or if they were hiking, or maybe on the edge of town they saw one near an orchard or in the foothills. Where were people seeing them? And so I based my work, or trying to learn more about them, on those locations. And like one thing I've learned over the years for sure with these Sasquatch is they really do know us humans, and they're we're pretty predictable. I mean, as much as I hike around in the mountains and stuff, we're very slow. When we hike, I mean, animals just got us whooped as far as being able to travel about in the mountains. We can only move so far, and so and they know that. So one of the things I've learned is, like, there's a certain area where I've been going for years up by Mount Rainier. It's up by a big lake up there, and some of your folks might know the area I'm talking about. Probably won't name it right off, but it's an area where there's a lot of activity and sightings have happened. And so as humans, especially up here in Washington State, we have what's called dispersed camping areas. And basically they're just like areas off a logging road where hunters or people have gone in and cleared out an area. And the ground is usually very bare because of people walking around. There'll be a fire pit. It's a dispersed camping area to go. But these areas can be, in Washington State, you can get deep into the forest, on a car where you don't necessarily have to hike. You can get pretty deep in, and some of these areas literally are bordered by wilderness areas. So this particular area is right smack dab in the middle of a huge wilderness area. And over the years, I've started to kind of learn that we have what I call our human rooms. So there's areas where we've carved out these areas in the forest, and they're campsites, and I call them human rooms. And it's very apparent when we're in these human rooms, we do people things. We cook, we play music, we laugh, we do all the human things that humans do when we go camping, right? And it seems like when these areas are very active, and it seems to me that, well, here you've got people doing people things. We're very predictable when we're in these, what I call rooms, camp areas, to the Sasquatch. And so this particular area, there's a huge ridge that goes up right behind these camp areas. And, it's surmised that more than likely the Sasquatch are coming down, and they're curious what the campers are doing, And so that right there was showing me, okay, well, people camp, they're in these areas. And the Sasquatch, when we're in these areas, they seem to be really aggressive and can be real vocal and almost playful. There's even thoughts that maybe it's the younger ones coming in and playing around. But I am also an avid backpacker, and I do get out into the deep woods a lot. And one thing I've noticed when you do go into the deep woods, it's either when you go into an area and camp there, it's either going to be super dead quiet because now you're in their room. You're no longer in a human room. Now you're in their room, right? You know, and you're deeper in. So it's either going to be really quiet, or if you just happen to camp in a really odd area, which is something I do. I never camp like where people want to camp. People always want to camp on a ridge with a view or near water or this or that. And although I do camp near water, I don't camp right on the water. I'm usually a quarter mile away or something. But when you get into these other areas, they're either super quiet or they're pissed off like a mother. And I've had that happen many times. It's almost like, you know, you're in their area, now they're really pissed. And I have a number of really good, you know, encounters from people that I've talked to around here where people have actually had some pretty aggressive things happen to them. A couple people have been picked up. One guy got drug out of his tent. Another guy got picked up by one and taken down a little ravine before he was dropped. And then another guy was hunting, and he always slept with his gun on his chest, and something in the middle of the night jumped on top of his tent and pinned him down. It actually broke a couple of his ribs. But he was up there hunting. So who knows what he was doing, but he was in one of these areas that was what I consider, you know, off grid. You know, he was deeper in the woods, just camped up on a ridge somewhere. And you know, it might have been that he was hunting that day and had shot his gun and maybe shot close to one or something that pissed him off. Who knows? He was up there taking his deer. I don't know, but the story of this particular encounter was pretty intriguing by what really happened, and he literally said it was just no rips on the tent or anything. It wasn't a bear. You know, he said this thing, the pressure was like a train on top of him. He could hear it breathing, and it was like hands holding him down. It like pounced on top of the tent.
Yeah, and I don't want to mess up your presentation, Paul, but feel free to go into any encounters you want to. I'm always fascinated by them.
Okay, yeah. No, I just kind of I was trying to explain kind of the difference between that I have found with, and a lot of it was from listening to eyewitness accounts. You know, what were the people doing? To me, that's more important than the stuff that's kind of started happening today or within the last 5 or 10 years. And, you know, I would rather listen to a real encounter and, you know, get the details from that than what's going on with what I call the fringe researching techniques that's going on today. You know, people going in the woods and doing the screaming and the banging or whatever. Not saying that banging on a piece of wood is bad, because I think that's actually a viable technique. I try to do things that people do. So I used to do a few screams now and then, but I do not do the loud screams anymore because of things that have happened to me, and I talk about that a little bit in one of my videos. But it's also called like
what happened to you? Tell us about that.
Well, basically, it's what the Native American Indians first talk about, the Sasquatch ability to hypnotize or put people in a trance when they're close, and that's what happened a couple times up at this one particular lake. Same place I'm talking about with these what I call rooms, where there's been a lot of sightings, not just me, but and then so it's what people kind of call getting zapped. I get up often to pee in the middle of the night, so this particular night I'd gotten up about 3, and I just laid back down in my tent, and then just shortly after that I heard this is the first time I'd heard it. I've had this happen to me before, but this I heard. It literally sounded like a herd of elephants or something running up behind my tent. I mean, I could feel the ground vibrate. It was just like this intense, and then it was just this most intense feeling. These aren't panic attacks or anything. It's a feeling that I've never had before. It's a very strange, scary feeling. And I mean, I had a thermal unit in there and everything. I mean, I'm there to research, and I literally could not move. I mean, an inch. I was terrified. In fact, I was basically praying and vowing that I was never coming back to that place. I was done. It was just so terrifying. And then I basically dozed off shortly after, woke up the next morning, birds are chirping, everything's fine. I'm like, I seem fine, but literally I experienced the night before was terrifying, and had that happen 3 times at this particular area. So I don't know what that's all about. I take notes on it, and there's some theories to that. But again, the Native Americans, talked about the Sasquatch having this ability to kind of stun you, and I think it could be a temporary type of a thing. They do. We've had them come into our camps at 3 o'clock numerous times, and we got them recorded, brushing up next to the tents, doing all different kinds of things, crying sounds, all different kinds of sounds. So, I was just thinking that it came in, and it was 3 o'clock, and I'd woken up, and it was in camp, or it was close to camp, and it can temporarily put you into this certain kind of state, which, it's known that other animals can do this too, especially when hunting. And there's different ways they can do this, even with infrasound, which is a low, inaudible to the human ear sound that they can possibly use for hunting or stunning prey or whatever. So who knows? I'm not quite sure what's all that to that, but I just know that it's happened, and it's very, very real, and it's a terrifying feeling. I don't wish it on anybody. But yeah, just getting the local stories and hearing about what people were doing, I went back to that as far as kind of the behavior traits, what I've learned from the eyewitness accounts. I think that's important. Now, stuff that we don't know about them, obviously, is where their social traits, where they live and sleep, and then at times I feel like I know nothing about them. And there's just something about it. So, I mean, at face value, what do I think they are? I think they're much more humanoid than animal, although they do show animalistic traits too. So, is it a leftover hominid? Go ahead, Wes.
I was curious. So you go into an area, and tell me about the actual research. When you say Bigfoot research, what does that mean to you? I mean, you go into an area, I'm assuming you find the area because eyewitnesses have come forward, and I almost think I know the lake you're talking about. I don't want to mess things up for you, but I'm almost sure I know where it's at. So you go into an area, and then what is it that you start doing?
Well, look, here's the one thing that I tell everybody. I research, but I tell other researchers, don't always have Bigfoot on your brain, okay? I've grown up ever since I was a little kid crawling around in these Cascade Mountains. The Cascade Mountains are mine, I know them well, and, I know what to expect when I'm out there. And so when I go out in the woods, I go out like I'm going to go out any other time, enjoying the woods. I do what I'm going to normally do when I go camping. I always take my guitar with me. As you know, I'm a lifelong musician, so I've always taken since my teens. I'm 57 years old now, and it's still part of my camping gear. Now, as far as the research end goes, yeah, there's tools now that we can utilize to help us, maybe obtain some of this evidence or whatever. One of the main things that I do is wildlife recording. I do have a 3rd-generation night vision scope, although I usually use it more to look at the stars than trying to look for Bigfoot, because you can see some pretty crazy stuff up in the sky, too, with the 3rd-generation night vision. Most people don't have the ability to have 3rd generation. It's a little costly, but, man, you can see some cool stuff up there. But that's a different story. So when I'm researching, I do take some of the basic things. I always try to take a tape measure with me. I usually, if I'm going to drive to an area, like if I'm driving 100 miles from my house and I'm going to be away, I'll usually try to bring a little bit of extra hydrocal just in case. Tracks are super rare. They're almost more rare than actually seeing a Bigfoot, and to get a good track is even more rare. So, I never usually count on trying to find tracks, although I do find trackways from time to time. But like I said, most of the time, you're not going to find a print that's really castable, that's going to really show anything, that's going to show anything to anybody else. But I do like bringing some of that along. And I own my own concrete business, so working with material like that is just kind of second nature to me. I've casted a lot of different things, and so yeah, I bring some of that along. I bring a small recording device along for audio recording, and that's another thing that I do with I have a recording studio here in my basement, so I've been able to download some pretty cool software for analyzing sounds through a spectrograph. And all animals have a hertz range and what's called a voice print. And so once you take known North American animals and you analyze them long enough, you know what their hertz range is and their voice print, you can tell pretty much when you get a wildlife recording and you put it in a spectrograph, you can visually see what the sound is, and you go, well, that's okay, well, that's this or that. I've heard people get recordings and it'll be of a whoop or something. They're like, hey, check this out. I got a whoop. Well, there's other things that make whoop sounds, okay? Birds, there's certain birds that make whoops and stuff. So you got to be, if you're going to post something, I feel, back it up with a little bit of some research work done on sounds that could sound like that, and then maybe have someone look at it in a spectrogram, because that spectrogram's going to tell you what the hertz range is, and there's some interesting things that we found definitely in the spectrogram of where we think the Sasquatch are, the range, what they're using, and their voice print and stuff like that. So it's fun. It's cool to be able to kind of look at sounds instead of just hearing sounds. So that's something that I do also.
And what is it?
Another thing that I...
Or go ahead, Paul. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, well, it was just about the location. You were saying, I do go to places where, there's been other sightings or where I've had things happen or whatever. But, areas that usually have a history or whatever like that are good places to start. And, you can do your own research. I see a lot of people from other states that want to come up to Washington, and they all want to go to like Skookum Meadows or this or that. I'm thinking there's so many other, but there's so many places to go. You don't have, just because there was one sighting, there could be other sightings there, but there's plenty of other places to go. And sometimes it takes a while to figure that out. But when you grow up in an area like around here, you get to know the areas just from camping and hearing the local stories. And so, yeah, I do try to go into some of those areas from time to time. But, your actions, what you do too, is going to make a big difference on whether you get visited or not. I tell people it's getting back to, if you're going to research, but also act like a normal camper, the best that you can, okay? And don't be like, if you set up a camp, try to be predictable going in and out of that camp. Try to use the same way going in. A lot of people go into camp and then they just spread out like, in a 360 degrees and look all around, and that's okay. You can look, but your chances of having something come in later that night, you're shooting it down but if you go in and out just like one way over at the corner of your camp and you leave all the rest of it open all the time and you never go over there or whatever, you see what I'm saying? You're getting your predictability down of what you're doing, and in return, hopefully something might come and visit you. I mean, I know in these certain areas up by this lake, they do come down. They just do. They come down and they visit certain camps.
Well, and here's my question, Paul. And normally I'm not a huge fan of Bigfoot researchers for obvious reasons. A lot of self-inflated egos, a lot of nonsense, really. You're one of the good guys, and I appreciate you coming on. But to your average listener listening, I don't really hear any research, but I hear a lot of hiking. Recording sounds. I don't, when I think of research, I think of something like Jane Goodall, going in and coming back with data. And, when a lot of these guys record sounds or take pictures, or it's cool, then they throw it up on the web. It's cool. But what do we do with that? I mean, where do we go from here? Right. What do we learn from that? And, I used to get criticized for just having eyewitnesses on. But in my mind, and I think you and I are on the same page, in my mind, you get so much more information. I've gotten so much more information from eyewitnesses than I ever have with Bigfoot researchers.
Yes.
But what do you do with all the data? I mean, what do you do with their audio? What is it that you learn from that?
Well, I'm a wildlife, or I mean a witness advocate. And first of all, because I totally believe in them. As far as the Jane Goodall thing, I totally believe in that method, especially with the Sasquatch. You know, people are so quick to want things right now. I mean, one of the reasons I got away from the BFRO was kind of those reasons. It was like, if something doesn't happen right here in the next 15 minutes, I'm out of here. And it doesn't work that way. You know, you've got to, if you want to see a Bigfoot out in the woods, the best way is to act normal and stay in one place for as long as you can. Don't move around. Stay in one place and be predictable. But as far as the research, you know, what do you do with it? Well, that's hard. You know, like I want you to share this latest. Well, it's not latest. I obtained a game camera picture back in 2012 in the Olympic Mountains after I made a fake rock out of concrete, hid it in these people's homesteads that were having continued sightings and things happen, banging on the house, all kinds of stuff happened. And I just now, it's 2019, I just had Chris Murphy, who I really respect. He does a lot of work for the Sasquatch Canada website. And I shared the photos, and I wrote up my report and shared it with him, and he just published it. And I'm hoping that you'll put the link up for the folks so they can look at that and they can read kind of how I do my reports as far as when I write things up on any possible evidence that I have. And that's where I like to be real thorough. I guess I came from a family. My dad was an art professor for 36 years. My mom worked at Wenatchee World. And I just like to be real thorough. I think it's important when you're putting down details, like if it was a trackway or whatever, you need to get as many photos as possible from different angles. You need to get measurements. And so the more data like that you actually write down, and I know it's kind of a hassle sometimes, and a lot of researchers don't want to do that, but write that stuff down, kind of write it up in a report, because that's going to be useful for later on when other people get stuff, then they can compare that to your report. I see so many people just posting pictures, like you say, just right off the bat, and there's not a lot of backstory or enough other initial information to let people really figure it out. Like just recently here, I'll just tell you something that just happened. Over here in Medical Lake, Washington, I don't know if you heard about the recent possible Bigfoot prints.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's kind of funny. So KHQ comes on, and they're like, oh, yeah, well, this guy, you know, so here's a guy out walking, and then they came back and they said some residents, well, it wasn't residents, it was one guy, took a picture of these holes in the snow. And, you know, of course, we've had a big snow year this year all over the state. And they were kind of staggered, but they were just these big, ugly marks. And, I mean, they kind of maybe looked like a footprint, but not really. They were really holy, and there was just like the one picture or a couple pictures, a little bit of video, but he didn't walk over and like look down into the print. And pretty sure that it's a moose that did it, moose bounding through the snow. And you can actually see a leg hole at the back of each of the marks. So, but they jumped right on the bandwagon. It's like these possible Bigfoot, and then it goes all over the world. And then people are like, "Oh, look at that! Those are great pictures," you know. And they're not even getting all the information, you know. They're getting like one or two pictures, and there's just not enough real information there to make an assumption one way or another. So, you know, I say just try to write down as many details as you can, even though they may not seem important right now or today. They might later on. You know, working with John Bindernagel, he was the same way. He would write a lot of things down and keep it on the shelf, but maybe pull it off the shelf at a later time. So it's important to write down, you know, anything that you find. I always try to use the two piece of evidence rule too. Like if I'm in an area and I find something like footprints or something, I try to see if there's other evidence also. Try to find two pieces of evidence. It's not always possible, but, you know, whether you've heard something or you found footprints, the more stuff that you have that collaborates with the other stuff, I think, you know, the better possibility of it being real also.
It makes me laugh about the doc. He used to always have this like this small pad of paper and a pen, and he'd always be jotting stuff down just out of nowhere. He'd pull it out and start writing. I'd be like, Doc, what are you writing down?
Yeah.
And it used to crack me up because I'd be like, what the heck are you writing down? He'd be like, oh no, I just got a thought. I gotta, so it makes me laugh that you brought him up, because I remember him doing that all the time when I was around. He always had a little notepad and a pen, and he'd pull it out and just start writing like a madman.
Yes, no, that's great. He reminded me of Columbo, actually. You remember Peter Falk, and he'd put one hand up to his forehead, and then he'd be writing things down. But so John wrote a lot of stuff up, and there are some good sites. I think the Sasquatch Canada website has some wonderful information on there and papers. There are a few sites out there. I think probably the worst place to come out is the whole YouTube thing, just because of you get both sides of the story on YouTube. You get hoaxes. It's hard to figure out what's real and not real anymore on YouTube. So I try to get people to maybe post their stuff in another forum, either by writing a real paper or a report, and try to put it out in some other places other than just YouTube, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Not that YouTube is all bad. It's got definitely its good parts to it too,
And let's,
all this, yeah.
Or go ahead, Paul. I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry, man.
Oh no, that's okay. I was just gonna say, I think all information could possibly be, important at some time or another. Because the more that we get on one story, for instance, then if that collaborates with someone else's story, then you start getting repeatability, and that's kind of what science is based off, is that repeatability. Even though some of this stuff is out of our realm and we don't understand it, which is okay too. I mean, gosh, we can't know everything, constantly learning things. So,
and that's why I wanted you to come on and talk about Bigfoot research, because I scoff at it because of what I've seen. I'll give you an example. It's 99% of the time, it's a guy in the woods filming himself and walking around going, wow, it's squatchy out here. It sure is squatchy. Then they take their baseball bat, start beating on a tree. I'm like, when I look at that, I think, do these guys realize the outside world is watching? I mean, I cringe when I hear Bigfoot researcher. I just cringe because 99% of it is nonsense. 99% of it isn't research. I hate to break it to everyone out there. Yeah. It's a lot of hiking.
Right.
It's a lot of camping.
Yeah.
And it's nothing more than that. And so I maybe I'm just being a dick and I'm getting caught up on, it's almost like it's said with arrogance. I'm a Bigfoot researcher. I've been researching for 40 years. Well, what does that mean? I remember one guy, I said, he didn't like it, and I don't blame him for not liking it. But I said, tell me 4 things interesting about Sasquatch no one else knows. You've been doing this for 40 years, researching, boots on the ground. I keep hearing about all this. Give me 4 things interesting about Sasquatch no one else knows. Nothing. That was the end of our conversation. Because he didn't have anything. And so I guess that's where I get tied up. Let me ask you, though. Let's say you come across a dead one. What do? Let's say a guy out hiking comes across a dead one. What should he do?
Oh, boy. Well, there's a lot of circumstances in that situation, Wes. And that, personally, it would be really hard just to say off the cuff what anybody would do in any given circumstances. Personally, I know they're big. Of course, everyone's like, well, cut this off or cut that off. You need a piece of it, this and that. It's like whatever. And it's like, my first priority would be getting out of there alive. Okay. And, these Bigfoots, I don't think are really dumb. And I also think they do travel around. There's a lot of suggestion and evidence that they possibly do travel around in family units. So, you got one Bigfoot, you possibly got 2. I just don't think they would leave
I agree.
their own laying around dead. I mean, it's kind of like a human, we don't leave ours around laying around dead. We try to find them and give them a proper burial and the whole 9 yards. So if I came across one dead, it'd be a pretty scary situation. And it would really have to depend on where I was at if I was alone, what exactly I had with me. You know, I always carry my heli knife with me, but you know, it might get a bit, you know, and then, you know, it's just safety. You know, you got to look at the circumstances. You know, what time of day it is. I mean, there's a lot of factors into that. Would I try to get something off of it? Again, it just depends on timing and everything. Possibly some hair or something. I wouldn't probably try to cut its head off and bring the head in. You know, I just think you get into doing something like that, and things could get real ugly real quick. You know, and I. Back to the researcher thing, I kind of like to call myself more of an enthusiast and an investigator, I guess. And I tell people this is an ongoing investigation, you know, and It's been ongoing since written recorded time. And so, yeah, the whole Bigfoot researcher thing kind of, like you said, especially over the last years, you know, back in the 70s when Bigfoot was really popular, when they first started having some seminars and conferences, well, the speakers used to have to write a paper, you know, an actual scientific paper, right? You know what that is, an actual scientific paper on their findings. And if you look at like the one that was up in Canada in 1978, there were some interesting papers. It wasn't just all on Bigfoot. It might have been on, you know, the ecology of animals' behavior or whatever. There was just a lot of different interesting papers that people wrote. And those papers were available to the participants there. Now is all people want. They want vendors. And they want this and that. So people go to these Bigfoot conferences, and usually it's what I've seen over the last 5-10 years. It's the same 5-10 people that talk at them anyway. And people are buying people are buying Bigfoot dolls and trinkets instead of buying the paper or a video of the actual work that these people did. But people aren't writing papers anymore either. They're just coming and basically telling stories or whatever. You know, I mean, even professors that are into it, you know, they're not really coming in with a written paper. Well, some of them have. I shouldn't say that. But for the most part, most so-called researchers are just going and talking, and they're not really presenting evidence in a proper scientific way. So I would like to see more of that. Like if I was going to have a conference, there would be no vending allowed. The only thing that would be available to the people that attended would be the work, either papers or videos of the work that the people that were presenting did. See what I'm saying? So
yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not trying to break your balls. Please don't take it that way. It's not you.
No,
like I said, you're one of the good guys.
No, I was just explaining, you know, what I would do and what I've seen, because I'm with you, Wes. That's kind of why I backed away from this whole thing. To tell you the truth, you know, when I first started doing it, it was more like the old days, you know, where people actually went out and really tried to do decent field work, and they documented the field work they were doing by writing things down, and you just don't see a lot of that. Like you said, it's more videos of guys going out and showing this and that, and then I really don't like when people use the word squatch or this is real squatchy or whatever. I know Bindernagel wasn't a big fan of that either, because it kind of demeans the whole meaning.
It sounds idiotic. It sounds idiotic.
It does. Yeah, it does. Thank you. It really does, you know, in my mind. And so, you know, yeah, I'm with you on that. It's gotten really bad. We've kind of gone backwards on a lot of things over the last years, and so.
Well, and the other thing, too, is you see a lot of these researchers or whatever titles they give themselves. And if you go and really look at what they do, 90% of it's arguing with other people or telling you who they hate, or it's like a game show, you know, and it cracks me up because the Bigfoot world cries and cries and cries and moans about how, science won't take us seriously. You know, if we can't talk about this or we can't talk about that, or, you know, we got to make sure science. What they don't realize, I'll break it down for everyone. Science doesn't take them seriously because of how they act. Like I'm not even I'm just a hillbilly, and I don't even want to conversate with a lot of these people, let alone I can imagine someone who actually has a degree. You know, the doc was a little different as far as he was willing to do that. And for the most part, he was very kind to everyone. But most scientists won't do that. And I think that's the biggest problem. You know, they run around, well, I'm a researcher. I'm a researcher. I'm a researcher. Well, define that for me. Explain this to me. Explain this research to me. And they can't. Because there is no research, really. No one's truly. Although I will say your trackcast, and I was hoping you go into that a little bit more detailed, and I'll post it to the blog again. But you found this trackcast, and you went through and documented everything. Can you explain to the audience? Let's say someone finds a trackcast, or I'm sorry, I keep saying trackcast, trackway. They find a trackway. How do they measure it? You talked about taking lots of pictures. Can you go into more details as far as what that type of research would include?
Well, I'll tell you, that was 5 days of hell. I mean, that was a lot of work. And anyone that says that there's not work involved when documenting this stuff is full of it, because it is a lot of work. Excuse me. It took, like I said, up to 5 days total of me going back and forth. One day, the next day, tracked it part of the way the first day, next day, documenting, taking pictures, taking video, while all this is coming in kind of full bore at you, full bore. And so, you know, you definitely sometimes miss things when you're trying to document everything. But for me, it was about documentation. It was like, you know, these tracks are not going to be here forever. They're in the snow. They're going to melt. I have to document things right now. And so, you know, for me, it was taking as much pictures, video, writing down, taking my tape measure, and getting a step length, which would be from 1 foot heel to the next. And then there's what's called a stride. A stride is from the same foot to the next foot, so it's actually 2 steps. The width, the length, the depth, the temperatures, the you know, when it snowed last, geography. There's all these things that, you know, you might not think that aren't important, but they are. And I mean, it's rare to come across something like this. You don't come across trackways, good trackways, very much. Someone might come across one good one in their life, you know, if they're lucky. Seriously.
Yeah, and that was a good one too.
You know, and that's the other thing. I mean, these things are rare. You know, there just seems like, but there's something else going on also. You know, when I hear about, you have a different, I guess, outlook when you're out here in the Pacific Northwest, because it's like, dang, there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of territory around here, and anything could be here. But then when you hear about these reports back in Ohio, for instance, it's like, where are they going? You know, I mean, there's farmland there, and sure, there's little waterways and all this and this, but, you know, it still really makes you scratch your head. And that's where it's like, is there something else going on? I don't know. I just know that the Sasquatch really use cover a lot. You know, if they were just magic and could disappear anywhere, well, they'd be walking downtown L.A., wouldn't they? You know, but they don't, and we don't see reports there. They seem to be in rural areas still and in mountainous areas, although, you know, we have them over here in desert areas too. That's one thing with my Western Washington friends kind of find it hard to believe, or they just maybe don't understand it. You know, you look at the Olympics, it's like people go, oh, that is so squatchy in there. Well, you could say the same about some of the shrub steppe habitat around here too, because there has been sightings in it, you know. Basically, it's any geographical area that we're not, but they could be, and they utilize those areas. So there's definitely desert areas in Washington State where they're traveling through too.
And where do you think that they go? Because, you know, something that big, you would think we would find it, but we don't. Do you have any theories as far as where you think they go?
Well, they're moving around for different areas for different reasons. I think the main reasons would be food and medicine. You know, of course, they're getting their medicine from plants like the Indians did. So at different times of year, certain foods are in certain areas. wintertime, the deer are down lower, so could be coming in. And also, one of the main reasons I think that we see them in strange areas is the gene pool. I think one would walk to New York City to get laid if it had to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, they're going to go a long
Yeah.
ways to keep that gene pool going. And some of my Indian friends talk about that too, and they're pretty adamant, saying that they do travel up and down the West Coast farther sometimes than people realize. You know, they can go 100, 200 miles like it's nothing. But you know, what do kind of almost sounds like what we do. What do we do when we travel around? Well, we get in our car to go to the store to get food. We go get our medicine a lot, and we go get in our car and we go visit relatives. You know, so why wouldn't something like a Sasquatch move around? You know, for that reason.
Yeah,
because I don't think there's a whole bunch of them. I think they are rare, but I think there's enough of them. I think there's more than maybe people realize, but because there is, depending on where you're at, of course. But
and you kind of alluded to it earlier, Paul. But so you think they're human, more humanish, if that's even a word.
Kinda, I guess. You know, that's a hard thing because, you know, when you look at the great apes, to me, a great ape, you know, we're 96% DNA of that. I mean, we're like 1% or 2% or less, you know, related to them. So this whole idea of I mean, I really think that the animal kingdom is a fabulous, wonderful thing that we barely are beginning to understand. But, you know, we've killed so many of them. But, you know, that's human nature. But, yeah, I think we're really closely related to the other animals, so why wouldn't it be? And who's to say what the cross line is? You know what I mean? It's like who is the boss of that? Oh, well, this is an animal, but you're not. You know what I mean? And actually, now most scientists don't even think there's a pognid family that pretty much, you know, we as humans are in the same family as all the great apes. And so the scientists really, if you do your research on that and you look at that, and some people might disagree with me, but if you really look at it on a face value, really close, really, really close. You know, we're all made up of the same stuff, and so, yeah, it seems like the characteristics and some of the things they do seem to be human, but yet they are animalistic too. You know, they've got animal traits too. But, you know, so do some humans. I mean, you look at some of the early humans, we've lost a lot of that, you know, with our technology. But, man, the early humans, man, they were tough, man. Are you kidding me?
Well, the other question I want to ask you is, do you get any weird reports, and what do you do with them?
What do you mean by weird?
I'll give you an example. Eye glowing, not eye shine, eye glowing, prints disappearing, people who came to you and said, hey, I actually had mind speak happen, and you walked away and go, I actually believe that guy. You know, strange, more of the weird stuff as far as what people report.
Yeah. No, you know what, Wes? I tend to keep an open mind on that. I think life's funner that way anyway. It's more interesting. You know, why keep a closed mind, man? Life's too short. You know, you gotta. But again, that's the repeatability issue. And if I had one guy come up to me and say, "Well, I had a Bigfoot mind speak to me," you know, I'd be kind of bothered with it. But I've actually heard numerous people tell me that, and when they look at you and tell you, they're pretty straight up, and they're not kooky people. And so, you have to kind of think about that kind of stuff too. I don't just sweep it under the floor. A lot of people call that stuff woo or whatever, paranormal, woo, supernatural. You know, paranormal, para means part, so part normal. Well, why would you be afraid of something that's part normal? So part of it you understand, but part of it you don't. So people tend just to throw that part into something that, oh, I don't understand that, so it's crazy. Well, that may not be the case. It might just be something that we don't quite grasp yet, you know, and that's okay. I mean...
Yeah, it seems bizarre for an animal, but I have heard it from Bigfoot researchers who came out and told me that, you know, and I'm like, well, why didn't you ever, but it's always kind of, hey, I need to talk to you over here type of thing. And I'm like, well, why don't you talk about that? Well, science won't take us seriously if we start talking about that. And I'm like, you're chasing unicorns in their mind anyway. Well, you know what I mean? Like, well, what are you worried about?
Yeah.
It is bizarre. Not always. They're pretty rare. I don't get weird reports as much as you might think. But the eye glowing, I get a lot. Have you ever gotten any reports like that, Paul? Reported to you as far as where it wasn't eye shine? And what's your take on that?
Oh yes, it's interesting because it is reported in a lot of sightings at night, and some of the eye shine is not from having light shined into it. As you know, some eyes can shine having reflective light in it, but these just seem to almost glow on their own. And I know that they've gone from a bluish white color into an orange color, and then into a deep red color, almost like they're doing their own thing. So I'm actually involved with some other folks we've been kind of talking about this lately, about this eyesight thing, and one of them was saying that it's that it was possible that it was some kind of a communication thing between them, but who knows? That's just someone's theory again, throwing things out there. So I don't know. I just know it does happen a lot. So.
Yeah, and I'll post your trackway video, Paul, and links to some of your other research you've done. And I really appreciate you coming on. Paul and I are actually good friends. It would have been a lot funner if I didn't like him, but I actually respect Paul a lot. Paul, what do you think it'll take to change the Bigfoot world? As far as the self-inflated egos and just all the ridiculousness of the Bigfoot world.
I don't know. Where we are now, I do want to say, I've seen this change over kind of in the last 5-10 years, and I still believe there's really two Bigfoot communities. I'm in an email chain with some of the bigger, older school guys that work around the world and have done things, and my friend here, John Andrews, who a lot of people don't hear about that much, but John's been researching over 50 years. He's actually a really good artist, too, one of the better Bigfoot artists, but he doesn't put himself out there. He doesn't promote himself at all. And there are a number of people like that are really, really low-keyed and are just good people and go out and, like I said, just go out without really Bigfoot on the brain all the time, but still can gather information, if things happen to them or whatever. They're just recording things that are happening, or following up on reports. And so, I still think we see the bad end of it because of our quick technology. We all have phones. It's easy just to press a button, boom, you're on YouTube or you're on Snapchat or whatever it is. And so, but there's still a lot of really good researchers out there that are low-key and that are going out and doing things that aren't a part of what I'm calling the so-called other Bigfoot community, the one that got kind of out of control here.
The 99%?
And like you said, yeah, the 99%ers, yeah. And they're all, like you said, they're all kind of fighting among each other instead of really, and there's all these new groups that, have popped up, and some people get me in the group without me asking, and then they'll post stuff, and it's like there's no backup to it. There'll be a picture of a tree with a branch bent over, and it's like, oh, there's Bigfoot, and it's like there's just, yeah, no,
I get it.
I know what you're saying, Wes. So.
Yeah, and I laugh at some of those. It's people say, Sasquatch won't harm you. Look, I got all these pictures. And, I would say, well, you're a tree stump that won't stand up and rip your arm off and beat you with it. So it's, I really wish for anyone listening, they would do kind of what the doc did. He put together some of the coolest videos of what I would call research. Some of the cooler ones I've sat through and watched them all, not because I love the doc, but I sat through and watched them, and I walked away with a lot of stuff. And I would hope a lot of guys out there would kind of, obviously can't replace the doc. You're not going to copy them, but take that model. If you're so worried about science taking it seriously, present something. Let's see it. Let's see what you have. And I'm not saying like your best video, because, you know, when the doc put that together, he didn't show videos and like, here's my evidence. He would give a presentation on it. And all these guys want science to take them seriously. Well, if that's the case, put something together. Because most of the time, it's how much they hate this guy, or they hate that guy, or they can't stand this guy, or this guy's a hoaxer, or, you know, on and on and on and on. It's like, at what point are we going to be talking about Sasquatch here? Because I don't hear anything about that. I hear your own personal gripes with other people. Show me something.
I'm totally with you on that, and I wish. Well, that's why I've been having Chris help me with some of my stuff. That's one thing I am still learning how to do, is make my own videos. I still have a flip phone. I mean, I don't even have an iPhone. So, you know, when I get pictures, I got to come back to my computer and download everything. But as far as making the videos, me and John talked about that at the end. In fact, he told me what video software he got, and I'm in the process right now of doing that. So myself, I can kind of be able to make my own videos and present them. But, you know, John presented them in a good way, in the way that he wrote them up, like you said, and that's what people need to do. And there's other places to post these other than just like in the Bigfoot groups. I would suggest places like the Sasquatch Canada website. There's a couple other really good websites where they kind of just tend to stay more with the research without all the excess baggage that comes along with it. But, you know, then you've got people on YouTube that are these so-called, now they're professional video analyzers, whether, like one I can think of is this guy called Thinker Thunker. And one of the newest videos that he analyzed is this so-called tree that gets pulled out, these trees getting pulled out in Russia or something. Have you seen that, Wes?
I have, yeah.
There's these big trees getting pulled out, and there's a lot of people, oh, well, there's the Bigfoot. And so I was watching Thinker Thunkers, and he's like got this picture, and he's showing, like, oh, well, there's a Bigfoot. Well, first of all, he said the trees were only 20 feet tall, and those trees, they're taller than 20 feet tall, guaranteed. I mean, I'm not sure how he came up with that, but if you look at the beginning of the video, there's just tons of logs all laid out right in the front of the trees are on top that are getting pulled up, but on the foreground, the mountain goes down, and there's all these logs laying out. Well, it's a logging landing. It's more than likely a buncher feller, you know, which is a machine that can come up and grab a tree. And this was in the wintertime, so I'm thinking maybe it came up and shook the tree a little bit to get some of the snow off, and then was cutting the trees. But, you know, you can actually see in the video what looks like a machine, but they're calling it a Bigfoot, you know. And to me, I don't know. You almost kind of got to go with what's more logical. You know, how many videos do we have of a Bigfoot? You can't even see the Bigfoot yet. They're calling it a Bigfoot. And so he's got all his millions of followers, and they're like, oh, great work, you know, oh, I love you, you know, yes, this is it. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think in that video it was logging, but I think, you know, Thinker Thunker does do good work, and I don't think he is a problem in the Bigfoot world. And
I didn't mean to be harshing on Thinker Thunker either.
No. It was a good example.
It's possible that he's done some good work also too. I'm not. You know, it's tough. You know, that's one guy's opinion when they're doing these analyzers. You know, when they're analyzing a video, anyone can analyze a video and say what they think it might be. You know. Yeah.
No, I agree. But Paul, I appreciate you coming on and sharing it. You know, very few researchers would actually come on and give a presentation, and I'm so happy that you did. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, man, you bet. My pleasure, and thank you. And yeah, look forward if you can. Put that. My latest report is this game cam picture I got in 2012, and again, I just didn't run out and post it. You know, it's 2019. I did post it on one of my talks that I did at Dallas years ago, but you've got to dig through my talk to find it. But, you know, I've never really released this in a public because I knew it was an ongoing investigation there, and it still is at this place where I got this picture. Me being a musician, I always think outside the box with this research. And so that was just kind of one of my ways of thinking outside the box with coming up with the idea of this heavy rock to encase the camera, and I think I tricked it for a split second, because basically it came up the ravine, poked its head up, and then you'll see on the camera, 1 second later it went down and it just caught just a little bit of it in the bottom corner, and then it's gone. And so I think it's pretty compelling. It's definitely interesting. If you put the report up for your viewers to see it, I'd like to hear some feedback what they think too. So thank you, Wes.
I will definitely post it. Thanks again, Paul.
Hey, thank you. Have a great day, man.
And that's it for tonight, everyone. Remember, if you've had an encounter, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And check out sasquatchchronicles.com. You can become a member and get additional shows. Until next time, everyone.
Something quieter with the lights on.